Hello, my name is Bill Haley. This is for Haley2024, and this is my education policy. So, I believe in free enterprise, more parental control, and the need for more school choices for parental control, religious liberty, and a lot more free enterprise in it will bring in innovation, reduce down costs, and increase the innovation and increase the standards. Okay, the structure of my reforms. First, you have to understand all of the Haley 2024, this full CRA structure. CRA is competitive regulatory agencies, and we are going to have competing regulatory agencies. So everyone's going to pick the regulatory agency they want to regulate them. Their governing agencies are fully executive, legislative, and judicial. So there'll be roughly a dozen different CRAs. Here's a little bit of the structure. It's hard to see there, but it's a lot easier to see on my website. Everybody's a member of one of the CRAs, and there's currently a lot of socialism in the current system. K through 12 is obviously socialism. A lot of socialism in the college system and higher education. There's even a lot of socialism or government control in the preschool and before preschool, with a lot of tax exempts or tax credits for childcare and different things. So government has too much control. We're going to try to get rid of a lot of that control. The education sector is number 22 out of 30 sectors because we split all government power into 30 sectors. So there's going to be about a dozen education CRAs, complete governing units. And everyone has to pick one and be governed by that governing agencies, by that CRA. It could be from real light, more libertarian, to real heavy, such as the public school system it is now. So if you want to stay with the public school system, you can join the public school system CRA, pay the current taxes that we have. Other people, they're without the benefits, without the taxes. So you join the level of government you want. So the education tax, well, part of this reform, part of the transition, is we're going to have the education tax needs to be moved to a more easily exemptible form. So everybody can have their own education tax based off of their own CRA they're joining. Every CRA will have their own tax or fee system. The more libertarian one will have very little to no taxes because they won't be given the benefits. The other ones will have a lot. So it has to be easily exemptible because you have to be able to apply it to the individual. Okay, for the transition, parents that forwent or pledge to forgo the public school benefits for their children under the age of 13 will be exempt from 8% of the lifetime education tax every year the government did not spend money on them or pledge they will not, yet was eligible. So what I'm doing is, we're doing an age divide, but anybody or parents are responsible for their children under the age of 13, and over the age of 13, the teenager starts taking on responsibilities. So in the past, if you did not receive the education benefit by the government paid for education benefit by sending your child to the private school or homeschooling, or you just did not send them to the public school, you did not receive that benefit. So you should be exempt from that tax. So every year you have 8% of the tax. Every year you did not go to the public school system, you have 8% of the lifetime education tax exempted. You're excluded from it. So we're not doing a regular exemption where you exempt $2,000 or a tax credit. The full education tax. This is just for a transition, by the way. Later we'll get into the full system I have set up. Teenage students, so 13 and above, if you did not go to the public school system, you're not going to be paying the education tax. So it's 8% for every year you did not go, 8% exemption. Okay, if a person did not receive the benefit, they do not pay the tax. So this tax is going to go on for another about 30 years because it's going to we need the tax revenue to help pay off government debt because they already gave you the education, and that's pretty much the system we have now. You receive the education when you are young, 5 through, 18 years old or so, and then you pay taxes for the rest of your lives, $8,000 to $10,000 right now per household in education taxes for the rest of your life. So we're doing an exemption for the people who do not receive that benefit of the public school system because they excluded themselves from the benefit. So we're going to exclude them from the taxes, at least a portion of it, if they went through just a portion. Okay, the lifetime education tax will continue for, I say 25. It depends on exactly how many years we need to do it, but 25, 30, 35, whatever it needs to be. We need to have accountants go through and really figure out how much money we need to compensate. That's a totally different issue that goes into debt and taxes. We have a very strong reforms. Okay, and is turned over to the Education Sector Board. So I'm not sure if I showed you, well, I kind of showed you those slides real quick about the structure. All 12 CRAs, education CRAs, belong to the sector board, and that sector board is made up of representatives. And for a while, for this 25 years, they are receiving that taxes. The education sector board is receiving the taxes. Eventually, well, you'll see in a slider in a little bit, they're going to be turning it over to the government to pay off long-term taxes that we have. I mean, long-term debt that we have in the whole system. Again, it's hard to get into one here, but we need that tax revenue. The education tax creates a source of capital for education loans. So because we are not going to have regular government taxes to fund the public school system anymore, we need a base of capital to let students or schools borrow, and it could be students or schools. It's really going to depend on what kind of system you want to be in. Again, it's competitive governing agencies. So you choose the one you want to go with, and whether it's students or the schools borrowing the money or the source of capital. And anyway, this creates a source of capital. So you keep on paying the taxes, and it creates a source of capital, and then you start borrowing from that capital. And again, that's complicated. We might be able to get into some of that now. I mean, a little bit. The public school system will be split into 6 sectors. I think I won't get into 6 in a minute. But public school CRAs can borrow from the Education Sector Board for the current expenses and repay the loans with parent/students' education taxes. So the CRAs, the governing agencies, your selected governing agencies over education will start having control over how much they're going to spend, how much they want to borrow. If they borrow, they need to repay that. So their students or the parents of the students, and that's going to be both, depending on the age divide, will be paying back that over a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen years, lifetime, whatever their terms are, because we're going to have competing governing agencies. So they're going to do some experimentation there. Every public school CRA will transition over several years to the education tax rate and terms for their new members and build up their own education CRA source of capital. So that source of capital at the sector board, that's temporary, 5 to 10, maybe 5 or 10 years. But soon, as they become established and they start having a system and they start having trial and error and successes and stuff, they're going to start building up their own per CRA, their own source of capital. 100 publicly traded corporations will acquire all public school assets. It's a unique idea. If we're going to switch over to a free enterprise system, we have a lot of assets in the schools, the personnel, the school buses, the stadiums, the equipment. There's a lot of assets, and that's worth something. We cannot just give that all to, let's say 20% of the people stay in the public school system. They don't just get all that assets and use all those schools, and all the private schools have to now build their own schools and the like. So this is a way to make it fair. So 100 publicly traded companies are going to have all the assets. We're going to split it up, 100, so we have a lot of competition and a lot of different ways of looking at this. Plus, it's a lot of money, and we don't want corruption, and it's going to help with corruption. So they're going to be in these corporations. They're going to be stocks in that corporation. At the beginning, 100% of the stocks are owned by the Education Sector Board, and they're going to start selling those stocks off. So let's keep on going on this. I don't want to get ahead of myself because I have a lot of slides. All 100 of these corporations will lease out their assets. So these assets needs to be used on a yearly basis. Their schools, their school buses, their equipment. We don't want them just sitting in a warehouse. They're to be used. So they have to start leasing them out. So we have a huge asset in this Education Sector Board, and we start leasing it out to the actual schools, whether it's public schools, and public schools are going to go to the private sector soon. You'll see over transition. Every month, the Education Sector Board must sell off 1% of the stocks of each corporation. This is basic dollar cost average. You don't want to have a sell-off of 100% of the stocks on day one. It's too messy. You don't get the right evaluation. You want to do it over a long term so you get the proper evaluation. And that will be bringing in money. I mean, that's huge amount of money as you start selling off these stocks coming into the Education Sector Board. Again, that's the representative sector board that all 12 CRAs belong to. And that's going to help create a system of capital, asset, large collection of capital and assets where people can borrow off of. The income from selling the stocks will add to the Education Sector Board source of capital. That's what I was just trying to say. After a decade, the remaining capital and ongoing cash flow to the Education Sector Board will pay off a portion of state debt created by Social Security liabilities. I say Social Security, all government debt liabilities. We have a whole system of debt. You can go to my debt page, you can go to my tax page, you can see what we do there. But let me just go through this real quick. Education is something that government pays for first, and then you work 40 or 50 years paying back what the government did for you. Social Security is the opposite. You work 40 or 50 years building up capital, and then you retire, and then the government pays money. So they kind of balance each other out, but you need the education taxes to pay off the debt created by Social Security. So a lot to it. There's a whole page on it. Hopefully I'll do a video on that. Private school CRAs will likely set up a variety of business models, including loans. So private schools still have a CRA. You can have a Christian base, you can have a Catholic base. They're Christian, but non-denominational, Protestant, that's what I'm talking about. Catholic base, you can have Jewish base, Muslim base, you can have whatever denomination you want, or totally private without religious backing. So you can have whatever, all these might have different CRAs. So there'll be several. We start off with 6 CRAs for private schools. And over a course of time, they're going to have to be at least 5%. But I'm going off topic a little bit. Private schools, CRAs, will likely set up a variety of business models, including loans. So just because you go to private schools doesn't mean that the parents have to pay up all the costs all at once as you go through school. I know a lot of private schools work that way right now, but hey, what, 10-12% of people can do that right now. And maybe more can do it, but they go to the public school because it's paid for. However, everything is going to private eventually here through the transition. So people making a middle class income or low income, they're going to need some loans. And it's not a bad system here. I mean, right now, you can say people getting out of public school don't have loans. Well, that's wrong. They pay about $8,000 to $10,000 per year for life in education taxes as a reimbursement. Remember, that's going to go away when you start paying back your student loans based off of that you went to the private schools and you have student loans and stuff. You have long-term student loans in exchange for not having the $8,000 to $10,000 in education taxes. Now, where do I get the $8,000 to $10,000? We spend about $1.1 trillion over about 110 million households in America. That's $10,000 per household per household times the 110 million households. So we spend a lot of money in government taxes right now. So let's keep on going. Every parent of a student under the age of 13, every teenage student, and every school becomes a member of one of roughly a dozen education CRAs. That's just the basic CRA structure. Everybody becomes a member of a CRA in every sector. Now, obviously, schools are going to, their association or membership with the CRA is going to be significantly more important than another type of business. I mean, that's pretty much another type of business. Doesn't matter what their education CRA is. They're not involved in it, really. You still have to be a member, but their school being a member, that's where they really regulate the schools. Or when I say regulate, you can have very light regulation or very heavy regulation. Depends on which one you want to join. Anyway, a little bit off topic. I know it's a new idea. I'm trying to explain it. Hopefully you can understand what I'm talking about here. Members vote on their leadership of their education CRA. So currently when we have school board elections, the winner takes all. In mine, you select your education CRA, so you're already grouped together. You're grouped together with other Catholics, or you group together with other Protestants. You're grouped together with other people who don't want religion involved at all. You're grouped together with people who want all the melting pot to come together and be educated together. You're grouped together with conservatives or liberals or libertarians. You're grouped together with the group that you want to go. There'll be about a dozen different groupings. And then you elect within your group the leadership of your group. So your school board, let's say, if you want to call it a school board, will be only voted for within the members of already like-minded people. So it's not going to be liberals fighting conservatives on who's going to run the schools. And anyway, let's keep on going. The current public school system will start with 6 CRAs. I kind of mentioned that already. The private school and homeschool families, anybody outside the public school, will have 6 CRAs to start. When I say to start, 5 to 10 years transition here. The public school CRAs will replace school boards. The public school CRAs will replace school boards. So right off the bat, we're going to quickly go into separate school boards for people. So if liberals want to have a liberal school board, now keep in mind, one big school building that holds 1,000 students might have 5 different schools within it, where you have the liberals and the conservatives in the big school building, but different schools within that same building. They might be educated with different curriculums. They might have different emphases. They might have a focus on sports, or a focus on music, or a focus on history in one way or the other, but they're going to have different school boards. They might have different budgets. They might have different schedules. They might have focus on videos versus a great teacher right in front of them, or a variety of each. So there's a lot of variety of what you can do in a public school system, or what different school boards can do. Every parent of a child under the age of 13 and every teenage student enroll in the school they or their child wish to attend. So everybody, I mean, you belong to a CRA, but you have to kind of also enroll in the school. Now, it's best if you enroll in the school that is governed by your CRA, the one that you became a member of, and most schools probably will force you to do that to be enrolled in their school. There's flexibility in everything. We'll have to see how that comes out, and because there's a lot of variety that we can do. Individual school CRAs always reserve the right to reject the application or end any association, which means a public school, a private school, nobody has to accept a student. And a student doesn't have to accept being a member of that school. It has to always be a two-party, if you want to include the parents, a three-party, whatever you want to call it. It has to be a two-party agreement, the school and the teacher. The school and the student, the school and the parent if the child's younger, under the age of 13. So it's very, you cannot have a student force themselves to stay in a school and disrupt the school or let's say it's not right for that student. Let's say that student's very gifted and that school does not have the gifted, and they just don't feel like they can really serve that student well. They don't have to accept them. There's a lot of reasons why you don't want to accept the students, and there's a lot of reasons, and no school can force somebody to come to their school, and no student can force a school to accept them. It always has to be mutual. Okay, CRAs above 20% membership must split after the 5th year. CRAs under 5% of members must merge. That's what I'm talking about. At the beginning, it doesn't matter how many members you have. We start with 6 on either side, but over the course of 5 years or so, we need to get between that 5 and 20% limitations on CRAs because that's the structure. We give it that transition because public school system currently has about 12 to 15%. People outside the public school system is about 12 to 15% of the students. So we want them to have a large variety right off the bat, and we want the public school system, if they start off with 40%, then they start off with 40%. Now they're going to probably have to quickly split. Anyway, there's a lot to get into that, but there's a good reasons why there's a 5% and a 20% limitations on membership. One public school CRA must stay secular because we're going to give everybody religious liberties. If one public school CRA, and we don't want to force anybody into religion when they don't want to be in religion, but we definitely do not want to force anybody to be in a secular environment when they don't want to be. They want their child inculcated in a religious environment. So we're going to allow that to happen. And I doubt many people will go to a totally secular like it is in the public school system now, but I don't know, maybe 10, 15, 20% will probably stay totally secular. Shoot, maybe 30 or 40% will just be mildly religious, where it only comes in a little bit, but they don't exclude it all the way. So we don't know how it's going to shake out. Free markets are always like that. We wait till experimentation happens and parents make choices, students make choices, and a lot of things happen. However, all other education CRAs after the 5th year now are all private, may introduce religion into whatever they do. So we'll see how all that works out, but we do not want to exclude or force anybody to be in a secular environment when they don't want to be. Education neglect laws will transition to a rating floors from the education rating system. So part of the CRA structure means there's a rating system for every sector. So the education sector has 12 or so CRAs, but they also have roughly 12 different RAs, rating agencies. Everybody joins a rating agency, and that rating agency is there to give them high quality information. Now, because we do not force anybody to go to a certain public school system, and we don't want it onerous to with government regulations saying how we need to educate somebody because they need to get an education to be a well-rounded citizen or whatever. We go with the education rating system, and they're going to come up with unique ways to make sure somebody's not totally uneducated. They can't read, they can't write, they're 18 years old, they go into the workforce totally not able to read and write or know history or anything. We don't want that, and there's good reasons for societal oversight. The rating system is societal oversight to make sure somebody's not falling through the cracks too far. And they have the ability to force a family if they are really falling behind, and they see that the child can do it, and they're just not getting an education, or the parents are just not doing what they need to do. There is some societal oversight saying, no, there's education neglect laws here. Anyway, more on that, and again, it moves to a societal oversight. It's not hard and fast rules. It's not a hard and fast, you pass this test. There'll be tests involved, but I'm not even going to tell you how the rating system is going to work because I don't know, because I'm not in it. I don't create it. That's societal oversight. Anyway, education CRAs competing for the business of parents and students will increase efficiency, standards, and cost effectiveness. That's free enterprise. That's the definition of free enterprise. When you have different groups of people, different companies, different governing agencies, different things, when they're competing, they get rid of hostile regulations. They get rid of ineffective regulations. There's no reason to have ineffective regulations. When there's a comparison between this one and this one and this one, people are going to quickly see which one is ineffective or hostile. And they're going to get rid of that. It falls away rapidly. You don't see bad products. You don't see bad milk on the shelf of the grocery store. You don't see things that people don't want to buy. People buy because they see the good standards. Anyway, and nobody wants their child to be uneducated. Parents and students will examine the ethics, values, and beliefs inculcated in every school. Boy, are we going to have a lot of choices when we have a dozen different governing agencies. And within each governing agencies, especially the private school ones, you're going to have a lot of different schools competing. Right now, the private schools control, 10, 12, maybe 13 or 14% of the people. And there's not that much variety. Well, no, there's a tremendous amount of variety in a lot of things, but there's not a lot of variety because government is still making regulations, controlling the private schools on the length of the day, the length of the school year, what they have to learn, standardized testing. There's still a lot of things that the government's involved in that's harming innovation and progress. And we're going to get rid of a lot of that because competing governing agencies, that's the definition. They're going to be able to change a lot of that. Get rid of the ineffective stuff. Anyway, part of this is going to be major, the ethics, the values, the beliefs. Whether you want a more liberal set of beliefs, more conservative set of beliefs, or take your pick. There's a lot of different beliefs that parents are going to be able to choose. And we're going to truly see what parents really do want because they're putting their hard-earned money behind this. Parents and students will expect more when there is competition for their business and a more direct payment system. Boy, oh boy, is this ever going to be true. Right now, people are like, oh, is the public school system worth it or not worth it? We send them there because I can't afford to spend $40,000 for my 4 kids to go to a private school. That's a lot of money. I mean, I had 4 kids. I couldn't afford a private school. We homeschooled. I didn't want my child in a public school because of the values, the ethics, the secular environment. I needed religious values inculcated throughout the day. So that's my personal. Other people might think, hey, I want more conservative, pro-patriotism, pro-yes America. Other ones might want America stinks because it had slavery. America stinks because it had Jim Crow and segregation and all this other stuff. People might, there's a lot of ways to teach, whether it's Howard Zinn or whether it's people like Dennis Prager and Heritage Foundation teaching pro-patriotism stuff. Anyway, here let's go a little bit more, but the direct payment system and the competition is going to be huge. All government involvement in higher education will stop. Oh my goodness. Why do we need the most educated people in this country? Why do we need socialism for them? I mean, that's the silliest thing in the world. We're creating a system where people outside the public school system, outside of college, or I'm sorry, that did not receive college educations, are paying for the people who are. How silly is that? The people who have a college education by far out-earn the people who don't have a college education. But we're taxing the people without a college education to fund the people who are? That's just so silly. And then that government control that comes with those dollars is just tremendous. So we're going to get rid of that. And the biggest thing on that is we're going to get rid of the licenses and degrees and ability for accreditation having a monopoly. Competitive governing agencies over education and over every business is going to make their own choices on what type of accreditation they need to work as a lawyer, as a doctor, as all these different professions. And that's going to be tremendously different. And education is going to fulfill those needs based off of those regulations and those accreditations. So there's a lot to say on that. I just can't believe we have government control over higher education. It is profoundly wrong and doing tremendous damage right now. All education tax deductions and credits will stop. Oh my goodness, do we really need tax credits and tax deductions for higher education or any education? First of all, tax deductions and credits are a tremendously horrible economic mechanism. We just should not do that. I mean, you can read my blog on education or tax deductions, tax exemptions, tax credits. Now, when I say tax exemption, you see that I already use those terms. I'm more talking about tax exclusion from the full tax. It's a totally different thing. I explain why it's different. It is tremendously different by the full nature of it. Higher education will be in the standard CRA structure. So it's still education sector, but higher education is the same. So it's not going to change. K through 12 and colleges are going to start to kind of merge in a lot of the CRAs. There's no reason why you can't come out of being 18 years old with a 100% ready to be a CPA, with at least be ready to go into a doctor's school or be ready to be pre-med, be pre-law when you're 18, 19 years old. There's no reason why we can't get there. Okay, the CRA structure, I'm almost done. 5 more slides, I think. The CRA structure allows new certifications, accreditation models, both on the education side and the business and professional requirement side. I guess I jumped the gun in a few slides ago. I just talked about that. When parents and students have more responsibility, they become more responsible. Oh my goodness, that's one of the major things wrong with the public school system. You take away a parent's responsibility to educate their child by having government tax everybody, pay for their education, control their education, do all this, and we wonder why parents are not as responsible as they should be. Boy, you give that responsibility to the parents to choose what school, to pay for that school, to set up the mechanisms of education and make those choices. Boy, they're going to be responsible. Their level of responsibility goes up, without a doubt. I know when I started going to college and I had to pay out of my own pocket because it came out of my pocket, I went to work for that money. And when the teacher started letting me out, the professor started letting me out early from class, I was like, wait a minute, I paid for a 2-hour class. I better get a 2-hour class. What's going on? I started getting mad. I didn't get mad in high school. Anyway, it becomes this big difference when you put your own money on the line, paying for what you want. Businesses will likely invest in young teenage students in long-term contracts with innovative terms. It's a new business model of where a business might invest and pay for the education of a starting at age 13, get them through a certain curriculum, still be well-rounded. Parents really want to influence their children to be well-rounded, but for the first 5 to 10 years, that child might be locked in or influenced to go to a certain set of jobs to and get paid a little bit less as in compensation for that credit, paying for that child's high school education. So it's just one little business model we're talking about here. There's a lot of business models that where we might not even be paying for education in the long run because they're working. They're doing data entry as they learn how to be an accountant, as they go for their CPA. And there's a lot of things to even look at about really reducing down how much education can cost. There's no reason it needs to cost 10, 15, upwards of $20,000 a year for a 10th grader. I mean, they can work. There's a lot of learning as you teach, as you do, as you're in the workforce. You're learning a lot of things. So anyway, don't get me on that soapbox right now. I need to get through this slide. So the charity economy will play a large role in education. There's going to be some people who are just flat out poor, flat out in the lowest income. The charity economy is going to help them out. They can still get the education loans. They can still do a lot of things. But the charity economy is going to be there as an assistance for some. Obviously, when somebody has a learning disability, a physical disability, and they need some extra, that's where the charity economy really comes into play. And it's going to play a larger role where it is needed. So, freedom. Oh, my constant slide here near the end. The freedom of about a dozen different CRAs and a dozen full systems experimenting will yield great results. That's free enterprise. What we're talking about is free enterprise yields great results. So I'm always asking for donations for my movement, and everything. I just need assistance. I need help getting the word out there. There's cost to in this. Everything is easy to find on my website. There's a lot of blogs I have written on this. A lot of things you can read up on the charity economy. There's a lot of things about religious liberty. There's a lot of things about why the public school system is unconstitutional as it's currently created right now. So please look around my website. Thank you so much.